Why people vote for Trump. They say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders, and that they were going to stop fumbling around with children's privates, because that's Prince Andrew's job.
For years, the woke left has worshipped Canada as a glittering utopia, a liberal snow globe America supposedly needs to copy. But not everyone buys into that frosty fantasy. On a recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, the comedian took a flamethrower to that maple syrup myth in a no-holds-barred monologue. Buckle up, this one stings.
Where every woke white college kid wearing pajama pants outdoors who'd had it up to here with America's racist patriarchy dreamt of living someday. I mean, besides Gaza. There's only one problem with thinking everything's better in Canada. It's not. Not anymore, anyway. Last year, Canada added 1.3 million people, which is a lot in 1 year, the equivalent of the U.S. adding 11 million migrants in 1 year. And now, they're experiencing a housing crisis even worse than ours. And we're sleeping in tents.
Right out of the gate, Maher tears into the woke left's sugar-spun fantasies about Canada. First target, their housing crisis. Fueled by immigration policies the American left salivates over like it's the golden ticket. Reality check. By 2030, Canada faces a staggering shortfall of 3.5 million housing units, a deficit that makes California look like a real estate paradise. Already, more than 1 in 5 households spends over 30% of their income just to keep a roof overhead. Yet the woke crowd still waves Canada around like it's the promised land. Maher doesn't just laugh at this fantasy, he torches it.
The price of a home here is $346,000. In Canada, converted to US dollars, it's $487,000. If Barbie moved to Winnipeg, she wouldn't be able to afford her dream house, and Ken would be working at Tim Hortons.
Housing in Canada is brutally expensive. The average home clocks in at $500,000, $540,000. In Vancouver or Toronto, prices leap past $750,000, often over $1 million USD. Compare that to the US, where the typical home sits closer to $350,000, $400,000, and suddenly Canada doesn't look so dreamy. The woke left loves chanting about adopting Canada's grand blueprint, but most of them can't even afford to live comfortably in America. Imagine slapping Canadian-level housing prices on top of that. We wouldn't be building a utopia, we'd be mailing eviction notices. The point is simple. Copy Canada, and you don't get affordable living. You get priced out of your own front door.
Because of mortgage debt, Canada has the highest debt-to-GDP ratio of any G7 nation. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. So does their vaunted healthcare system, which ranks dead last among high-income countries in access to primary health care and ability to see a doctor in a day or two. And it's not for lack of spending. Of the 30 countries with universal coverage, Canada spends over 13% of its economy on it, which is a lot of money for free health care.
Canada's problems are far bigger than the liberal cheerleaders ever imagined, and the cracks in their so-called utopia are showing fast. Bill Maher isn't some raging conservative. He's a liberal himself, once proudly claimed by the left as one of their own. That's what makes his criticism sting. If Maher is calling out Canada, the fantasy isn't just cracked, it's shattered. And he's not ranting for the sake of it. He's holding up a mirror to America, asking with a sarcastic grin, "Do you really want this blueprint? Because if Canada is the model, be ready for sky-high housing costs, broken promises, and plenty of regret."
Saying Canada still isn't a great country, it is, but those aren't paradise numbers. If Canada was an apartment, the lead feature might be America adjacent. And if America was a rental car, Canada would be America or similar. And again, honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't, because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right.
Advise. Maher suddenly crossing over to the right? Not exactly. He hasn't changed who he is. But when the left drifts too far into ideological la-la land, even lifelong liberals can't stomach it anymore. They don't switch sides out of love for conservatism. They simply wake up to the insanity around them. Look at Joe Rogan or Elon Musk, hailed as progressive icons once, now branded right-wing simply for questioning woke dogma. Maher's following the same pattern. The left has sprinted so far off the cliff that anyone standing still looks conservative by comparison.
Worst, Canada is what American voters think happens when there's no one putting a check on extreme wokeness. Like the saga of Canadian shop teacher Kayla Lemieux, whose pronouns are she, her, and those. Kayla is now back to being a guy named Kerry, but 2 years ago when they showed up to teach children, the progressive high school they taught at said that they, the school, not the person. Really, you couldn't have found another word. We were using that one. Anyway, okay. They were committed to a safe environment for gender expression. Safe for who? What about the children?
This is exactly what happens when society collectively decides everyone gets to dictate pronouns and the rest of us are forced to play along. Chaos and confusion follow. Take students bewildered by a teacher who alternates between male and female presentations, insisting affirmation one day, reverting the next. This isn't education. It's theater, leaving kids more confused than enlightened. When identity changes with the wind, clarity disappears, and contradictions pile up.
The equipment in that shop class. There was once a weirdo D-list movie producer in the 60s named Russ Maher, who made low-budget B movies like Faster Pussycat Kill Kill and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, always featuring women who look like this. His movies played in porn houses and were featured in Hustler and Playboy. Okay, fine, but who says, no, when it comes to huge, ridiculous save that for the kids?
And all of this isn't happening in some far-off lab. It's happening right next door. In Canada, the country American liberals idolize as a progressive utopia. Look closer. Sky-high housing costs crushing families, chaotic identity politics, confusing classrooms, and government policies that feel more like social experiments than solutions. Yet the American left stares across the border, starstruck, convinced Canada is paradise. Bill Maher's point is clear. Before liberals demand we copy Canada, maybe they should take a harder look at the reality. Spoiler, it's not the fantasy they've been selling.
This is why people vote for Trump. They say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders, and that they were going to stop fumbling around with children's privates, because that's Prince Andrew's job.
Maher is right. Trump didn't win by accident. He won because centrists and disillusioned liberals were fed up with endless wokeness. The Democratic National Committee had become a circus of identity politics, cancel culture, and virtue signaling. People weren't just rolling their eyes, they were leaving. Even younger voters weren't buying it, rejecting rigid ideological policing. The DNC became less of a party and more of a lecture hall. Americans don't vote for lectures, they vote for leadership. And when the left failed to deliver, they handed the White House to Trump.
With all the other good place countries in direct opposition to America's choice to affirm children's wishes on switching gender, no matter the age or psychiatric history. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore.
Here's the irony the woke crowd never admits. Many of the countries they hold up as models, Sweden, Finland, the UK, have restricted or rolled back gender-affirming care for minors. Some have banned it entirely until adulthood. These governments weighed the science, the consequences, and prioritized protecting children over appeasing activists. Yet in America, the left pushes it as the pinnacle of progress, pretending the rest of the world is marching in lockstep. Spoiler, they're not. Even enlightened nations know better than to gamble with kids' futures for ideology.
Immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killings. And one result is that the far-right parties are in the government now there for the first time. To which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true? Of course it's true. It's not a coincidence the quality of life went down after the Somali gangs started a drug turf war using hand grenades. Calling it racist doesn't solve the problem. It hands future elections to someone who will solve the problem and who, I promise, you're not going to like.
And opening borders without control isn't compassion, it's chaos. The results are clear. Fentanyl smuggling and usage have skyrocketed under Biden, devastating communities and stealing lives. Ordinary Americans now pay the price, with kids overdosing and families burying loved ones too soon. The left frames this as generosity, but real compassion protects citizens. Mars's point is simple. Without border control, there is no safety, no peace, only chaos dressed as policy. From housing crises to gender confusion, border chaos to fentanyl devastation, the so-called utopia collapses fast. America doesn't need Canada's blueprint. It needs sanity, leadership, and reality.